I was 21 years when I wrote this song.
There's only one way to get rid of the nuclear threat. That's to get rid of nuclear weapons. I think we've got more chance of getting rid of nuclear weapons than we do of getting rid of capitalism.
Really?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
I don't see how you can possibly do that.
Well, how are you going to get rid of capitalism?
Well, how are they doing it in England?
Well, we couldn't even come up with a general strike to support the miners. And the working class in Great Britain are totally demoralised. There's no way that they're never going to get.
What's happening in Liverpool now?
Yeah, Liverpool's one small city on the brink of a heroin epidemic. The working class of Great Britain look to the tangible things that they can achieve, not to the intangible. The revolutionaries in Great Britain are willing to let the country slide down a long, long, steep hill before they claim their revolution will spontaneously happen. I personally am not prepared to wait 10 or 15 years and let certain sectors of the country fall into abject poverty just so someone can have their revolution and replace our current boss with them. I believe that we can vote in a socialist government that will get rid of nuclear weapons in Great Britain, which I know is a small way and only a small beginning, but we'll continue to live in a society that continues to work within capitalism. I think the fact that Russia and China are both swinging back round to market enterprise, it's closing up the gap between capitalism and it just doesn't have to be so selfish and so me all the time.
So how did you think the miners' strike was going to end?
Well, we all, those of us who were involved all hoped it would end in victory and they would get what they wanted, but the fact that it didn't end that way was, in some ways, a relief because they'd taken so much punishment that they had to come away and learn to fight another day. It was the only way that anything was going to happen. Yeah. Margaret Thatcher needs her 4 million unemployed to make the economy work. As long as she has that surplus for employment, then the unions are scared to move. Well, I mean, I think even in America you've got an even larger bureaucracy that makes it even more difficult for you to have strikes, and things like the Taft-Hartley Act, which we don't have in Great Britain, has kind of really sort of hog-tied the American unionism. But I mean, the one thing that sort of thing can't defeat is sort of the ability of working people to organise and to respond to that. I mean, no end of bureaucracy or bosses saying things can stop workers when they're determined to do something if they can organise across a broad enough base. But they fail to behind the miners, while the rest, the sort of the working class as a whole never really gave them up, but they certainly didn't respond in any way that would have changed things. They were quite willing to sort of pay lip service to it, but to respond to it, I was very disappointed. Yeah, that's the great thing about American unionism. The rank and file seems genuinely interesting and genuinely radical. The bureaucracy involved, and when you're faced with something like what Ronald Reagan did to the air traffic controllers, I can see you have problems on your hand. We don't really, the government doesn't have the power to sack people like that. That Reagan does have over it. And I do think when we take an English example and try to put it onto an American framework, it becomes very, very distorted.
But do you ever think that the unions can cripple the industry too?
Well, it depends whether the industry wants to cripple the unions or vice versa.
Well, like if say they're going to strike over anything at all, like if some.
Well, people don't tend to strike over anything, especially if they're not getting any benefits, which you don't get anymore in the UK. It's not it's not that you're not encouraged to strike. Strike is the last thing you do. It's not the first thing you go straight to. Springsteen. When he first was coming to England, we heard he was going to be supported by ZZ Top and the Clash and Springsteen top of the bill. That would have been some gig to see. But unfortunately, he's come without anything at all to support him.
Yeah. I really did hear that rumor though.
You did?
Yeah.
Being Springsteen? That's news to me. I'd have to do a 3-hour set and Springsteen would do his 5-hour set. And that.
Yeah, how come you're back in the States so soon? I mean, you played here just, 2 months ago or 3 months ago?
Nah, January. Or was it February? February sometime. Well, if I made videos, then I wouldn't have to keep gigging all the time. But I don't make videos, so...
But how long were you back in England for in between?
A good couple of months.
Yeah.
I'd have to get in a couple of tours, and do a tour of Scandinavia as well.
So when you're coming in here, through the famed immigration, I know how hard time they can give people coming in. Do they give you a hard time?
No, I don't think they do. No, because I got a.
You got your T-shirt here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you're selling records. They let you in. The Redskins, I think, would have a lot of problems getting in because they are members of the Socialist Workers' Party, which is a revolutionary socialist party, and those of us who have become involved in the miners' strike have had our names taken here and there and our photographs taken. And although, I mean, I'm only a member of the Labour Party, so I'm not really, you know, I'm more of an evolutionary socialist,
Yeah.
revolutionary one. But
But as you become better known, you think like if you're trying to come back into the country again, that they may give you a hard time?
no, I think someone in Texas will shoot me. Well, you must understand that
always
we more or less consigned American rock music to the scrap heap about 3 or 4 years ago and gave up on you all and thought, well, you know, let them keep their Grateful Dead and their foreigner records, and we'll carry on bearing the flame of rock and roll high. And you know, of course, now to realise that through the auspices I made of college radio in this country, to learn that there are bands like the Minutemen out there and Husker Du and the Replacements, it's like meeting an old friend again, saying, you know. It wasn't so bad after all, and a lot of them, especially like the long riders, and
They're evolving over there recently, right?
yeah, and they're going down really well over this. I mean, club size, not mega, but club size, and especially the riders are sort of like touching back on something that's very, very what we look at as classic American rock music. You know, especially that Byrds thing. I mean, the Byrds were one of the biggest American bands to go down in England, period. And although they only didn't come over much and didn't have that many hit singles, the mark they made was very, very deep. You know, they were at one time they were to us what the Beatles were to you. I mean, they were the epitome of the American rock band, the Californian thing, the harmonies and everything. So I think what you're getting at Long Riders gigs is people who were old enough to remember how urgent and interesting the Byrds were originally, and a lot of young kids who never really heard the Byrds and are now getting into the jangly guitar thing.
Right.
So that's what it is. I think it's a genuine respect for the English music press of American music, and to some extent we're picking up on bands that aren't getting any press over here.
You're right.
You know, I mean, you're talking about the NME being the biggest sort of like the Rolling Stone of England, and when was the last time the Long Riders were on the cover of Rolling Stone? So it's difficult. I mean, it's a lot more difficult in America because in England we have one national radio station. So when you break once, you break national. You know, you don't have to continually sort of break out your city and then break out your area and then, you know, take on especially such a closed radio as the Top 40 over here, you know. I think it's very good that the radio station over here passed their playlist among one another. I've had a number of questions asked to me about Northern Ireland on this tour, and a number of people saying to me after gigs, why don't you sing about Northern Ireland? And I am as an Englishman who's grown up with the Troubles in an English context, I think I'm too close to it to make decisions. It's not the sort of thing I can see any clear-cut thing. I mean, you come to America, and because you're a foreigner, you can observe things a little bit better. But you can't talk about Ireland, about the IRA or anything like that in London without taking into consideration they blew up the Tower of London, they blew up Harrods, and as soon as that comes into it, it all gets completely blurred. So I have great difficulty I don't believe the army should be there. I believe it's a social problem. And the very basics of it has to be solved with the consensus of the Irish people. Now, you must realise that the British Army has trained for the last 17 years in Northern Ireland. It's the best counter-insurgency army in the world, bar none. If there was a revolution in Great Britain tomorrow, the army would be on the streets, would have tanks and armoured cars on the street corners within 24 hours. If Margaret Thatcher had died at the Brighton bombing, if she'd have been killed along with all the cabinet by the IRA, not only would that have given the army a free hand in Northern Ireland to do exactly what it wanted, that would have made all the leaders of the miners' strike would have been arrested, plus all the radicals who were involved in the miners' strike would have been rounded up as well. And instead of having someone elected in charge, we would have probably had a civil servant at the very worst. We would have had a general, and that would have gone on. That would have been the end of libertarianism in Great Britain. Period.
Yeah.